Welcome to the Guide to Wellness podcast. I'm Susannah, licensed acupuncturist. We're here to chat about health and well-being. Just a reminder, everything in this podcast is information only, not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. It's useful information to maintain a healthy life balance.
Hello everyone, Susannah here. And as I prepare to post this podcast, I'm listening to it and I'm imagining that you may be thinking, wow, this is pretty complicated. What do I do with this topic? So what I'd like you to do is to listen through and be willing to use the concept of discernment that we talk about to sort what is useful to you, what is not useful to you, compost or recycle or let go of what is not useful, and really draw in what is valuable to you. Use these tools and understand that what we're doing here with this podcast, the Guide to Wellness podcast, is to bring to ordinary life these concepts of classical Chinese medicine and functional medicine to enrich your life in ways that make sense to you. So with that said, enjoy the show. Bye. Welcome everyone. Here we are at another episode of the Guide to Wellness podcast. I'm your host, Susannah Freeman, and today we have a fantastic discussion lined up about how to take care of ourselves as we transition from the earth season to the metal season. And we're going to explain more about that. And here with me is our team here at Great Turning Healing Center, Jack Schwem, fabulous licensed acupuncturist, and Don Davaz, our integrative health coach extraordinaire.
Hello.
Let's get started. So here we are in Montana at the 45th parallel, and we're coming out of the earth season and heading into metal, and want to chat about why does that matter to our health and what does that mean. So we're going to try to translate for you how traditional Chinese medicine principles play out in our daily lives and serve us to be healthier and happier. So one of the reasons why we skipped over the late summer earth season is because we were having so much fun being outside and enjoying the late summer season here. And how about you? But I was working in the garden and picking tomatoes and grabbing those last days of full sun. And right now we are heading from earth into metal, and that is the autumn season. We're going to talk more about this in a minute, but here's why it matters, because I don't know about you, Dawn. Have you ever eaten like cold watermelon in January along with a chopped green salad, or have you ever eaten like meatloaf and mashed potatoes day after day after day in July? And how does your body feel when you do that? And how does it feel when you eat with the seasons?
Yeah, absolutely. So you bring to mind my habit of only eating tomatoes seasonally, and that's something that actually came out of that experience of eating tomatoes in those cold times. And you just feel like, one, it's bringing in not the right stuff for you during that season. It's colder, it's juicier, it's wetter, and I'm like, oh, it's already cold and juicy and wet outside. But then also just you can tell when you're eating a good fresh tomato in this late season how rich it is and how it nourishes your body.
Right.
And
it tastes different, doesn't it?
It tastes different. And then if you're eating those heavier foods in the summer, they are just slowing you down. They're salty, they're drying, they're not going to be fueling you in this vibrant life energy that you get.
Literally feel different when you eat out of season foods.
Absolutely.
I know I do too. Maybe I'm not the only one. Anybody else out there? So this is part of our discussion about how to eat well. And it's also about when you do that and you notice, gee, is this tomato square and gray or pale, right? And it's been sitting in a warehouse since September or July. Or did I just pick it out of my backyard? And how does that taste and quality affect my body awareness when I eat it? And my taste, and am I enjoying my food, and does it make me feel better afterwards? That's really the heart of the conversation we're having here. Jack, anything to add, or you want to jump right into what metal is and why does it matter to your health?
So the seasons that we're talking about are...
I said metal, I'm so sorry. Earth.
Which we're solidly out of here in the northern world, but other places in even the US may still be transitioning out of the earth season, and that's the ripening, the late summer season of abundance. The earth phase is associated with collecting dampness. We see.
What do you mean by dampness?
Dampness is fluid in the body, in the world. The analogy is like pouring water onto good, rich soil. It all soaks in and becomes muddy. So when your body is attuned to that earth element, earth phase kind of thing, it's easy to collect dampness from your food, whether that's the baked goods or the dairy products. Those are dampness inducing in your body, and you can experience that if you have a tendency towards that. Your nose can run, you can feel heavy.
Okay, so clinically, or how somebody might feel when they have too much dampness, because we want fluid in our bodies, right?
Certainly.
We don't want to be too
You're
dry,
mostly fluid.
right? So in Chinese medicine, we talk about dampness and dryness. So what you're saying is that we can go too far into one extreme. We could be too dry. Stay tuned, folks, for the metal element. But in the earth element, we can be too damp. And that's not a good thing, because then, as you said, we feel soggy and heavy and lethargic. Is that right?
Yeah, and brain fog can be a result of dampness, all sorts of things.
Okay. Sinus congestion, like
Yep.
what I've got right now, because I'm getting over a head cold. My head feels a little stuffy. So that's dampness in my sinuses?
Yep. And or your lungs,
Right.
depending on
If I had a cough.
how large you want to group different parts of the body.
So dampness could be in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not literal, everybody. This is a metaphor.
Indeed.
But it could be literal in the case of a runny nose.
Yep. Or edema, swelling in your legs. That
So
would
it's
be
both
a
metaphor.
literal dampness.
Okay. What if I sprain my ankle?
That would be dampness and heat, doing something briefly in that joint to help it heal.
Mm-hmm. Is dampness ever a good thing?
I think all of the process of the body in moderation and in their proper time and place are a good thing.
Uh-huh.
Even the most dramatic illness is your body trying to come back in some way or another to harmony.
Cool. So I think we got it. If Earth is out of balance, it can be into too much dampness, and that looks like heaviness, swelling, brain fog, lethargy, weight gain, maybe hypothyroid, or this funny one, a lack of thirst or thirst without the desire to drink. We see this clinically, don't we?
For sure.
I've definitely experienced
Right?
this.
Right? And now Earth can be insufficient as well, which means you're not eating enough, you're too thin. In my personal body, I have both, right? I have localized dampness, and then I have a Earth insufficiency. So paying attention to what I eat with the seasons is really important. And if I eat too many carbs, I don't feel well. So that's dampness, how the earth element is helping to influence the body. And just a little bit of medical piece here. The earth element corresponds in Chinese medicine to the spleen and the stomach organs. And the spleen is further differentiated into pancreas, small intestine, and the spleen, which means how do you take food and actually turn it into viable energy, fluids, and blood, and what we call qi in the body. And then how do you move it around and turn it into red blood cells and white blood cells and brain cells and muscle tissue and all the things you need to be healthy, right? Anything to add there, sir?
Not without getting pedantic.
Okay. Well, let's stick with what's how do we keep this clinically relevant? So one of the things that I really wanted to let people know is that the climate in which you live does actually influence your health. I used to work in a very wet and humid place in Western Oregon, and it seemed that everybody had some level of dampness in their bodies. And then when I moved to Montana, where it's so dry, I was wondering, what am I going to see in the clinic? And lo and behold, what we see here is more dryness. Very interesting. So it does shape how we tell people what to eat, how much water to drink in a day, and all kinds of actual clinical relevance to our work here. And one of the things that I think we do well here is help people understand that and what to eat with the seasons and how to customize your nutrition for your body. So let us know if you have more thoughts on that.
I have a question.
You bet.
So you guys talked about dampness and dryness, and how dampness can happen in various tissues in the body throughout the year. And it's something that you guys treat every day. It's something that you see any time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But can you have both dampness and dryness in the body at the same time?
Mm.
Definitely.
Go right ahead, Jack.
You see, because the body isn't a soup, it's more structured than that. You have different tissues. And so I see a lot of people with dry sinews, tendons, muscles, difficulty with that aspect, but with phlegm and dampness in other aspects, with brain fog, weight gain, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So what is that in Chinese medicine? How would you kind of describe that? Like what's the pattern there?
It would be a lack of moisture in the liver and an excess of moisture in the spleen.
And just a side note that in these cases, when we talk about liver and spleen, we're not talking about a Western medical diagnosis or pathology in those. We're talking about the larger function of those systems in the body.
Certainly.
So careful
And
with
even
that.
saying like dryness in the liver, dampness in the spleen is an oversimplification of what I would actually be treating anyone for. But that's the Spark Notes version.
Yeah, the depths of Chinese philosophy is
Because
unfathomable.
it is actually, it's not just that we're sticking needles into people, in random places. There's a vast body of knowledge here. And as practitioners of Chinese medicine, we are diagnosing people individually, but using that thousands of years of tradition. So what we find with any individual person in the clinic is that they might have several diagnoses that we're working on at the same time. And one super easy to understand example of this is when I had this head cold last week. I had localized dampness in the sinuses, but I also had this dryness in the lungs that I was... And Jack was helping me. We're paying attention to both of those at the same time. And the beauty of Chinese herbal medicine is that you can do that. Mm-hmm. So you can do more than one thing at a time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Maybe not 5 or 6 things, but how about 2, maybe 3? Okay, so we digress a little bit. Hopefully this is interesting for all of you. Dawn, can you share some insights as our health coach about the transition from that passionate fire of summer to the slower, more restful part of the year, in keeping with this thought about how do we move through the seasons?
Absolutely. So I think what you have just talked about and something that we've chatted about a little bit in the clinic is that taking care of ourselves now in this time is going to help us in the coming months. So that's huge. And as a health coach, that's where I would say start dusting off those habits that you might have put away on the shelf for a while over the summer where you were out just doing all sorts of fun things and your self-care manifested in a different way. And now as the weather gets colder, we're going to be a lot more in our homes. We, of course, have an increase of various cold flu season, things like that. So dusting off those really healthy habits and self-care. And part of that is this idea that we just have been going all summer, and now we need to take our foot off the gas pedal. You don't need to hit the brakes necessarily, but just allow yourself to slow down and say, okay, what is it that I need to keep moving forward with, and what do I want the next few months to look like? That means slowing down, letting go of that urge to just keep going, and sometimes you have to make a really conscious decision to relax. Mm-hmm. And it's a time for wrapping up projects and letting go whatever doesn't serve you anymore and nurturing those healthy habits that maybe we let fall by the wayside.
I don't know about you, but I sometimes have a little bit of struggle with, I get a little bit, feels like manic with wrapping up the garden and processing yet more vegetables and apples. And I wind up working really hard at house projects, knowing that before long it's gonna be too cold to do that. I will be buried under 3 feet of snow in the backyard. You're saying that I just need to be a little bit more discerning and careful with my energy and not push it too hard?
Yeah, and all of those things we're going to see a variety of things that need to happen, to need to be wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
But there are going to be things that are higher priority. Maybe they're time sensitive, like getting those apples in.
Like, it's about to snow. Let's
Yeah,
go.
exactly. But there are some things that we may be able to say, okay, I'm going to get to that, but it will happen in its own time.
Mm-hmm.
And just being in a state where we're ready to let that happen, how it's going to happen, and prioritize what we need to prioritize. And sometimes those projects might end up in the compost, we might have to let them go completely, but it doesn't mean that they won't help nurture us in the future, because that frees up time and space and energy to focus on the now and what needs to happen.
Nice transition into the metal element there, Dawn.
Oh.
So she was very eloquently speaking to the process of, as we move from the big energy, full growth time of summer into the ripening and the slowing down and taking your foot off the gas of late summer and earth, and feeding ourselves and harvesting. Now we're heading into the metal season. It's the time of discernment and harvesting. I wonder, Jack, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that metal season, and why does it matter to your health, and what do you mean by discernment?
So metal phase in the Wuxing, in the 5-phase theory, is about that harvesting and discernment and the cutting away of things. So in the context of the season, it's a great time to, like Dawn just said, be cutting away, choosing which things to continue to invest time and energy in when there is less daylight and less energy in a day to put into those things. The lung and large intestine are the organs associated with the metal phase, and therefore this season that we're moving into. The lung and large intestine are actively doing this separating and letting pass away all the time, but the lung plays a pivotal role in reflecting seasonal changes. When summer brings allergies, when winter and autumn has colds and flus, the lung facilitates oxygenation of blood and tissues while eliminating unnecessary carbon dioxide. Both the lung and large intestine are situated close to the exterior, which means they're vulnerable to pathogenic influences. So when your body is weak, the first things that will happen is those respiratory stuff or digestive stuff, constipation and diarrhea, tend to be the first places that illnesses start.
What about, and one of the things I like to just think about with the metal element is you take in a lungful of air and your body pulls in the oxygen and breathes out the CO2. So it's this very natural pulling in what's needed, pulling out what's no longer needed. Same thing with a bite of food. You take the food in, hopefully it's what's needed, and you absorb using your fabulous fine-tuned earth, spleen, stomach functions, and you absorb and digest that food, and then using the large intestine, you eliminate out anything that is no longer useful in the body, including things that have been recycled, hormones or red blood cells, all of it, lymphatic waste, all goes out, right? Also through the urine, but you get the idea. So that's that metal element of moving in, moving out, right?
And to go back to the gardening metaphor, when you harvest wheat or grains, you have to winnow and pull the seeds from the chaff, and deciding where to store that so the chaff can turn into soil and compost, and the seeds can turn into bread and beer and whatnot,
Right.
is an important part of this discernment aspect as well.
So something I'm noticing just in the various things that you've brought up is that it sounds like that this is a big time of transition and transformation, as well as a time that really requires self-awareness and like body awareness. Like you talked about,
Right.
Susannah, the sensation of you can feel when your body is being supported by those seasonal foods versus something that isn't going to support you. And that takes a lot of conscious awareness of what you're feeling. So I know that when you guys are looking at people who come into the clinic, you have ways to see that. But how do we help people to foster that discernment through Chinese medicine, through food,
Right.
through mindfulness? What do you think?
I was just going to say, have we talked about mindfulness and meditation yet?
Or, breath work for lung season.
Oh,
Right?
Yeah.
So any practice that brings you into your awareness of yourself as a human being and the influences, the thoughts, the foods, the breathing, the how much sleep did I get? We talk about these things all day long, and it's a matter of discerning and processing all the information that's coming in, and like you said earlier, making priorities based on that discernment to what do I need to pay attention to and what do I not. I've been doing this lately with thought patterns and literally even with conversations. I need to pay attention to that person and show them compassion, but I don't need to take on the storyline that they are, right? So their story, I don't need to absorb.
That's really important.
Right? So how do we do this? You can do it in so many different ways. Any spiritual, religious practice whatsoever, and simply paying attention. I don't know, Jack, what's your best way to pay attention and increase awareness in your body? You're good at it.
Well, I love Qigong and meditation, and I think the simplest one and a great tie-in for lung season is breath work.
What's breath work?
It's any process of intentionally engaging with your breath. Whether that's just going through your day and noticing that you are breathing. And if you really notice breathing, it's a truly joyful experience. Every natural function has a joy to it, and breathing happens so often, and we so neglect it with our mental aspect because we don't need to pay attention to it. But when you do pay attention to it, there is a phenomenal joy to be found.
I think one of my favorite ways to just aid in discernment is doing a little kind of boundary meditation of like, where's my boundary and what do I have coming in through that right now, and what is it that I should be putting up boundaries around. So it's a healthy barrier in terms of just saying, this is what I need right now and this is what I don't. And I like to do that by visualizing like a golden net. And then that way you can determine how permeable it is, what you're letting in and what you're putting out, and then you can always tighten it up when you need to close down and protect a little bit.
So I have two thoughts on that, Dawn. I think this is a super important conversation we're having, and because it's what you do all day with health coaching, and I think it's really important that people remember this as part of their daily hygiene, right?
Absolutely.
So this boundary meditation that you do you practice that on a daily basis? Because I can imagine how once you get used to it, you could do it on the fly in the moment.
Absolutely. I love that you said that, actually. Yes, you can do it on a daily basis. I personally do it roughly weekly, and I can always lean into that when I'm feeling like my boundaries have been pressed upon and I'm not ready for that. So in the moment, it might just be taking a breath. And that's, honestly, I'm glad that you brought up breath work, because one of my favorite things to tell people when I'm working with them is just be willing to take that single breath for yourself. And just allow that to create this awareness of this space of where your boundary is, what everybody else is doing, and what is okay to pass through and what isn't. So it might just be taking a moment to close your eyes and take one deep breath.
Nice. We can do that right now.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a future podcast about boundary meditation. I love that. And what you said about what can I let in and what does not need to come in, right, is a theme. And by the way, folks, all of this is mental element that we're talking about. And I want to share, Jack, you said that you love Qigong. I do too. My Qigong in school, when we go to acupuncture school, we learn everything from Qigong and Tai Chi to Chinese medical diagnosis to herbs to acupuncture. And I came to her with this dilemma of how do I take care of all these patients in a day without, frankly, burning out? And how do I do it? And I interviewed all of my mentors and all of my favorite teachers and all my favorite body workers. And her answer was my favorite. She said, well, Susannah, if you're all filled up, there's no room. So that was Master Chen about 30 years ago. beautiful teacher. So if you use the 5 seasons in Chinese medicine to fill yourself up appropriately, and you're full, then there's no room for anything else, for illness, for extra thoughts, and you can use your energy for that which is your highest serving and to enjoy your life more.
That's beautiful.
Thank
Love
you.
it.
All right. Have we covered everything? Jack, do you want to chat a little bit more about metal in terms of food therapy, or Dawn?
I think the one last thing, in the process of filling up, sometimes it's important to let things go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're full of things that aren't appropriate. And I think that's another big lesson in the metal season, to compost the stuff that you have been carrying around that fed you once and isn't anymore.
On the food end of things, we're in this pumpkin spice season. And don't get me wrong, I love pumpkin spice. I have made a couple of pumpkin baked goods myself so far, and yes, it did incur some dampness, but it was delicious.
Well, wait, but not pumpkin itself. Maybe the sugar that goes in it?
Right.
Like the pumpkin latte?
Exactly. I'm thinking about a coffee cake that
Because pumpkin is quite good for you.
Yes, and it did have pumpkin in it. It was delicious. But
Moderation.
this idea that we know that this season comes with this desire, this cultural norm to start baking and having those sweets and those bready, heavy, starchy carbs. And for that, it can be really a comfort thing. It can be sentimental, but it isn't always going to be what serves our bodies best. So leaning into that seasonality, not by going for the pumpkin spice latte, but by going for the pumpkin.
Right.
And looking for those squashes and any sort of seasonal foods that are coming in right now. And since we're still kind of in that earth time, you mentioned the fruits. So squashes have, they're a fruit of a vine. Apples.
Come to my house if you want some apples, everybody.
Carrots and parsnips.
Yep.
Yeah, sweet potatoes. And just to tie it back to an earlier conversation, I am in a point where I don't necessarily want those fresh greens. But if you listen back to our earlier podcast this spring, we froze greens, and now those greens can be put into soups and cooked.
Yes.
And that is a great way to still include those variety of vegetables and fruits without leaning too heavily into those starchy carbs.
Right. Yeah, so pulling out what's in the freezer if you have it. And remember, it's so easy to get fresh, dark green leafy vegetables these days. So I love that our farmers are making that more available to us, and our grocery stores are. Remember that we're not saying don't eat raw foods ever in the fall and winter, but we're saying, how about if you're going to have a salad, which we do recommend, make it a winter salad and braise those greens a little bit, mix them. I'll actually mix them into a chopped salad with lettuce. And, throw some cabbage in there. So we're starting to talk about winter, but it's a transition. So please eat raw foods, but pay attention to your body, and do you digest those raw foods, or is it generating more dampness in your gut or your sinuses? And so moderation in everything, right? And I was thinking back to the discernment. We're a little bit walking in circles here, but just for a moment, humor me. If I have that pumpkin spice latte, because indulgence is a part of life, I'm going to make sure that I really enjoy it. I'm going to sit down and be conscious of just enjoying that pumpkin spice latte. And I'm not going to be too hard on myself later. If I made a conscious decision to drink it and enjoy it, I'm not going to add the guilt and shame, because that is one of those things that, back to the metal element, is really not serving me at all. Can I use my discernment to make really healthy choices in my life? And that includes having some fun sometimes, right? And if I really suffer, then I suffer the consequences, and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
So just want to make sure everybody knows we're not talking about hardcore, feel guilty and hard on yourself if you make decisions that didn't feel good in your body later, but to do your best, and to every day's a new day. Keep in mind how embracing that seasonal influence in your body can make your well-being improve and make your awareness improve. So If you want more reminders on that, please come see us or schedule a consult. We can do this over telemed, but we can also give you an acupuncture season to tune you into the season, increase your body awareness. That's actually one of the best ways to increase body awareness is body work. And we can help you get tuned up for the season with acupuncture, with herbs. We have seasonal herb formulas that we use, and we can make recommendations for you that are specific to you and the diet that makes sense for you. We love giving guidance on transitioning your personal habits and supporting your health with coaching, with acupuncture, with Chinese herbs and nutritional supplements. So we're here to just be your home for natural health. I think what we do here best is to help your body return to a natural, healthy state. And then as we help you improve, we also help guide you in doing things differently in your daily life. So you go out back to your normal life and you continue to feel happy and healthy, and maybe just come see us for a tune-up, but you don't need us anymore because you know what you need to do for your body. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you can continue to be healthy and happy on your own, and let us guide you along the way. And a heartfelt thank you to Jack and Dawn for being part of the team here, for your valuable insights, and also to you for listening and joining us. You can always connect with us by just picking up the phone, 406-599-0088. You can also go to our website, greattraininghealing.com, and also social media. All the links are in the show notes. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your late summer in heading into autumn season, and tune in December or January. We'll be talking about winter. Alrighty. Bye now.